Welcome to Yakar Salon, our basement ex-territoria for cultural, music, artistic events, a la Judaism, and the address for all apicalsis, a la Judaism. So, I'd like to discuss something short, hopefully, from Parashat Kedoshim. We have a mistaken identity going on. We have a distinction that we have been taught since Gan, since kindergarten. It's like mother's milk to us. And this is the distinction between mitzvot, ben adam lechavero, mitzvahs between man and his fellow man, woman and his fellow woman, and her fellow woman, and mitzvot ben adam lemakom. Mitzvot are between man and God. This distinction does not exist in the Torah. If it does exist, it might exist in the Nevi'im only as a critique of the korbanot in which the Nevi'im say, the prophets say, what about your moral standing? Right? In other words, they separate out morality and ben adam b'chavero to kind of hold a mirror to Am Yisrael and say, where are you at? But even then, the distinction is not really there. It's a later distinction. In the Torah, there is no category of mitzvot which are ben adam lechavero, and mitzvot which are ben adam lemakom. And the reason is that everything is in front of God. The problem with our distinction is that we create categories and we have separated elements of our life. This is here. This is there. This is how I act in the synagogue, and I don't bring my character into the synagogue. There's questions I don't ask. In order to believe, in order to pray, I must leave part of myself at the door of the synagogue, at the door of ritual. Ritual is holy, and then there's my life. Who knows what goes on there? Let's take a look at Parashat Kedoshim, chapter 19. And the salient feature of chapter 19 of Sefer Vayikra, Parashat Kedoshim, is that whoever edited it needs to be fired. The editor is awful. It's one big mess. It's a chont or a salad, but a salat in Hebrew, right? It's a mess. It skips from one category to the other category. It can't stay on track. It's a chapter that has what you would call mitzvot, ben adam lemakom, and immediately afterwards, within the same breath, mitzvot, sheben adam lechavero. And all of them have this title or subtitle or this recurring phrase, this poetry of Ani Hashem. The chapter is almost like couplets. And each time it says, Ani Hashem, Ani Hashem. It keeps on moving. It is a mess. If I were to tell you to try to separate out, try to work out what is the subject of chapter 19, you will be unable to tell me. We start with Ish imo v'aviv tirau, keep Shabbat, then it goes straight to Avodah Zarah, then it goes into Pigul, Korbanot, then we're at Pe'ah, which is about leaving part of your sadeh, for your part of your field for the poor person, then we're into don't steal. Look, Verse 11, Lo tignovu, don't steal. Lo tachachashu, lo tashakru ish be'amito, right? Don't steal, don't lie. And then the next pasuk, the next verse, which is part of this couplet of Ani Hashem, is Lo tishavu b'shmi shaker, right? If we're already talking about lying, now don't use God's name in vain. V'chilat Hashem elokecha Ani Hashem. And you will profane the name of God. I am Hashem. It's all mixed up. There are no categories. Everything is an issue of Ani Hashem. What's the big gain? Why am I so gung-ho about this? Who cares whether the distinction exists in the Torah or doesn't exist in the Torah? The reason why I care is that I think what the Torah wants to suggest is the way we are in the world, the way we treat our fellow neighbor, the way we treat our spouse, the way we treat our kids, the way we are at work, the way we drive, is all in front of God, is all Ani Hashem. Just like davening, just like keeping Shabbat. It's all Ani Hashem. It's all part of being spiritual. We live in a world where we're constantly separating, dividing, and we lead a non-integrated life. We pine, we desire integration, but that will require sacrifice from us. That will require from us not to leave our personalities at the door of the synagogue. That will require from us to bridge between who we are on Shabbat and who we are on the weekday. It will demand of us somehow to create a discussion between the shul and our homes. And this is tough. This is hard work. But this is relevant to us because the kedusha of separation is not relevant to us. We might enjoy it. You know, we go off, have a little experience, whether it's in the shul, or whether it's in Oman, or whether it's in India. Go off and have a little one-off, spontaneous experience. But in the end, that isn't going to affect our lives. It's not going to be what can help us bring our spiritual selves in this world. It's not just about spirituality, it's about morality. It's about how to be holy in this world. Holiness in the Torah is a mess. It is a challenge of all these things. You have to separate yourself. You also have to be connected to the world. You have to be involved in what we would call mitzvot with God. And you have to be involved with everybody else and people. So only that way do I think our religious lives will become relevant to ourselves. Because I think that's one of our biggest dangers and desires. We desire to be integrated, to make our religious world relevant to ourselves. And one of our biggest pains, both personal and national, is that we aren't managing. And to end on a sour note, it's no surprise that people sometimes feel that religion has nothing to say to them. That for all its depth and for all its experience, religion seems to have nothing to offer them. And the reason is because of our warped quirky way of looking at what holiness is, and the separations and the distinctions that we make between what we think is in front of God and what we think is our own personal business. And as we all know, God's even in our bedroom, unfortunately.